think Ben Barnes ages, actually. Man is stuck at like 20 forever. Actually, he's not, but he is. He's looking good. I need to stop. Hi, my name is Bethany. You're watching a Writing Werewolf video, and today we're going to be talking about the Grishaverse, Six of Crows, and of course Shadow and Bone, the Netflix series that just came out today. Fair warning, this video will contain spoilers for the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Shadow and Bone TV series on Netflix, and probably also Six of Crows. In preparation for Shadow and Bone dropping today, I reread the original trilogy in the Grishaverse, which is the Shadow and Bone trilogy, book 1 of the Grisha series, and probably some of the weirdest books I've ever read. I had a weird memory of them being quite bad, which turned out not to be the case, which is good. So I think in this video what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the series as a whole and look at it as a young adult series, and I'm now going to look at it as an adult and do it as a young adult as an adult video, and then we're going to compare it to the Netflix adaptation of Shadow and Bone. I haven't found a video in a while and I've kind of got out of the swing of it, and now it's not it's not coming back to me as quickly as I wanted to. Yeah, so we'll look at the Shadow and Bone series first, and then we'll look at the Shadow and Bone Netflix adaptation, and then I don't think I'm going to discuss Six of Crows or Crooked Kingdom very much in this, as apart from how it pertains to the plot of the Netflix adaptation, which I will get to in a moment. I'll split these off. There'll be timestamps down below if you only want to, you know, listen to me ramble on about the TV show or not. The 3 main books of the series, the Grisha series. So the first book is Shadow and Bone, and then you've got Siege and Storm, and then you've got Ruin and Rising, which is the third one. So I have this weird memory of these books being like not bad, not amazingly good either. I couldn't really remember what happened in them. I think I always compared them to Six Crows, which was infinitely better to me. Like, I really enjoyed Six Crows, and I think sort of looking back, that's probably where that sort of idea that Shadow and Bone wasn't as good sort of came from. But yeah, I reread them and they're actually pretty good. I actually quite enjoyed them. The series covers the story of Alina. She starts off as just a regular human in the army, in the first army, in Ravka, and she goes into the Fold, which is this big swathe of darkness that cuts across Ravka, separating it into West Ravka and East Ravka. And while she's in there with her best friend Mal. They've grown up together, they were orphans together in the same orphanage. They've never sort of been apart for too long. And he gets injured by a monster that lives in this fold. And she, in an attempt to save him, discovers that she has Grisha powers. And she specifically is the Sun Summoner. So just to sum up the Grisha, basically they refer to magic as the small science, which is quite refreshing. I quite like this sort of magic system because it's not really magic in that it's totally unexplained. It's more like, oh, here's what we can do when we break things down into smaller and smaller pieces and take control of particles and manipulate that, and I really enjoyed that part. So the Grisha make up the second army. They study the small science, as I said. They're split into 3 main categories. You have the Corporalki, which consists of heartrenders and healers, so people who can affect the living body. They can, you know, like a healer will obviously heal things. A heartrender normally stops people's hearts, is quite like offensive with their magic. Then you have the Etherealki, which are summoners. So you have Squallers, which are wind, Infernae, which are fires, and which is fire, and Tidemakers, which are water. And then you have the Materialki, which are like fabricators. So you have Durasts, which are like, you know, metal and physical things, and Alchemy, which are like chemicals and like explosives and stuff like that. That's what they deal in. And then alongside these, you have the Darkling, who I guess the Darkling and Alina are both summoners, but they keep each other separate. So the Darkling is a very powerful Grisha. He controls shadows and darkness. And he leads the second army at the beginning of this book. And then you have Alina, who summons the sun, and she's not as strong. And part of this book is working its way into how she accesses her power, and how she unleashes it and gains control over it and things like that. And in addition to these, certain creatures have amplifiers, and amplifiers are things that amplify their power, as implied. And these amplifiers, only one Grisha can have one amplifier, and the amplifier can only belong to one Grisha. So if you try and take someone else's amplifier, it doesn't work. If you try and claim more than one amplifier, it doesn't work. But at the same time, these rules can be bent, which is also part of the plot of this series. So as with any series, there's shippers. You've basically got two kinds of shippers here. You've got Dark Lena and Malina, I think they're called. And Malina are the people who ship Alina with Mal, her best friend, who she's known since they were children. That sort of like best friends to lovers sort of thing. And then you have Dark Lena shippers who ship the Darkling and Alina, and that is where there's a lot of controversy around that, because the Darkling is said to be, at the beginning of the book he tells Alina he's 120 years old, but it's later revealed that he is centuries older than that. And even if he was 120 years old, she's 17. I'm fairly certain she's late teens. She's not any older than that, I don't think. And she's it's very, very, very much Twilight vibes here. So this series is told in first person, so you get everything from Alina's point of view, and you do see how she does it's kind of Twilight vibes, because he's way older than her, and kind of forbidden. So it's that forbidden lovers to enemies to lovers sort of vibe, or lovers to enemies. I think is the real thing here. You've also then kind of got that Vampire Academy sort of vibe. He's her mentor, and she admires him, and at the same time that's kind of leads its way to infatuation, and she becomes kind of obsessed with him. Basically, they there's a couple interactions that the Darkling and Alina have. You get to the point where Alina finds out that he's using her to get what he wants, and she kind of casts him out, which is good. It's the narrative actively condemns their sort of relationship, but even after that, because it's told from Alina's perspective, you still get moments where she kind of thinks about him, and she's not lusting after, but she's oh, what could it have been, and stuff like that. But that's quite it's a very human, a realistic human reaction, and I think it does belong in there. I think it does work. It probably should be in there, And then you have Melina shippers, and they're kind of on again, off again, because he doesn't fit in now that she's they grew up and they were both human. They were both totally normal human, and neither of them had magic, and now he's she's different, and she's off doing other things, and he's a bit, oh well, okay. But also they're mostly separated for the first book, so it doesn't really apply to the first book, but later on in the series you get that. But I think the romance in general was really well done. I think the romance between a lot of the characters were really well done. There is some LGBT representation if you squint at the last book. A lot of the time Alina's on her own, and you don't get sort of interactions with, you do get interactions with other characters, but they're never really deep. So you get Leigh Bardugo is amazing at writing character grip and ensemble casts. So towards the end of the series, when you have I think there's 12 of them all together, or 10 of them all together, and you have sort of these interactions between them, and they're bouncing off each other, and that's sort of that's her at her peak. She is excellent at writing those ensemble casts. And it really comes out in Six of Crows, which I'll get to in a minute. But I think for the beginning of this, it was really Leigh Bardugo sort of coming into her own, and you don't get a lot of that in the beginning. So I can see why somebody would turn off at sort of the first book. But overall, those interactions are good. Those interactions are sort of what keep you going. I loved Nikolai. I love Nikolai so much. He's got his own series now, which sort of, it's a duology. It's King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. I haven't read them yet. I'm planning on reading them some point this year. Reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy has really sort of inspired me to read them all again. But I love Nikolai. I love Nikolai so much. He doesn't come into it until the second book, but he's my favourite character in this entire thing. I really felt like I rooted for the characters in this first series. And I think that's one of the most important things, is whether or not a reader can form an emotional attachment to the characters, and I think Leigh Bardugo absolutely excels at that, at making her characters vulnerable and human, and all the while they've got these magical powers and they're doing everything. Like Genya and David were just, I mean, they were just so like incredibly like sweet with each other. It's a bit slightly annoying that sort of every single character ends up paired off with someone else. I mean, you see it in Six of Crows as well. There's 6 of them and they all sort of split off into their wee pairs. Again, with Six of Crows, just very briefly, the ensemble cast is absolutely incredible. You can tell Leigh Bardugo, like, her practice that came from Ruin and Rising obviously translated really well into Six of Crows, and their interactions with each other, like, they had some of the most quotable interactions ever, and I was so glad some of them made it into the show. I liked as well how in Siege and Storm, Alina struggled with leading. That's not something that you tend to see in young adult fiction. You know, you sort of get those protagonists, the chosen one protagonists, where they're really good at everything as soon as they put their mind to it. You know, they can lead an army, they're good at fighting, they're good at, like, strategy, they're good at, like, you know, showing everyone up around them. They're always confident, they always know what they're doing. That's sort of like, you know, part of, like, the chosen one trope. But if you're like chosen one tropes, and you don't, but you're not so keen on maybe, you know, everything being perfect, you want to see them fight their way up, I would definitely recommend the Shadow and Bone trilogy, because Alina does struggle. She struggles a lot, like, in the beginning, and then, you know, she struggles again in Siege and Storm, where she's in charge of everything, and then she struggles again in Ruin and Rising, under the Apparat's thumb, and it's a constant uphill battle for her, and I really appreciated that, and I really enjoyed that. So now I'm going to discuss the Shadow and Bone TV series. So it came out today. There are 8 episodes. They're all roughly 50 minutes to an hour long. I watched all of them today. That's all I did today. And honestly, it was one of the best adaptations I've ever seen. And I say adaptation. The reason I'm saying adapt and emphasising that it is an adaptation is that it's not just Shadow and Bone. So basically the way that it works out, like, history-wise, the Shadow and Bone trilogy happens first, and then the Six of Crows duology. The Six of Crows duology happens afterwards. So Six of Crows happens, I don't know how long afterwards. I can't remember exactly how long afterwards, but it is afterwards. And Six of Crows is the duology is basically a different genre entirely. It's more of like a heist novel, as opposed to, you know, chosen one sort of coming of age, coming into power sort of trope. Sort of story. So in the books, they're separated by a good few years. You know, the characters from either series don't interact with one another. In the Netflix adaptation, they've brought the two of them together. So it's not both plots side by side. It is the plot of Shadow and Bone, but with some characters from Six of Crows added in. Now, I didn't think it was going to work. I'll be honest. I thought it was going to be a disaster, because I was like, there's no way you can run both these plots at once. But they haven't, and I think that's why it works, is that this is a prequel to Six of Crows. So obviously at Six of Crows there are 6 of them, but there are only 5 represented, and only 3 of them are actual, like, refer to themselves as crows at that point. So basically the plot of the TV series for the first season is the same as Shadow and Bone, with the added sort of bonus, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but with the added bonus of half of the crows trying to kidnap the Sun Summoner, Alina, which makes for a very interesting like predicament, because obviously to get to the same ending point of Shadow and Bone, you sort of have to follow the novel's progress pretty closely. But adding in extra characters and adding in this separate sort of plot kind of replaces some of the interesting things that happen. For example, at one point, Alina's supposed to run away by herself and follow the orders of Bagra, this old woman, and instead of doing that, instead of, you know, going where like following Bagra's escape route out and and finding her way back in, she instead goes a different way and ends up stowing away in the back of the Crow's carriage as they're leaving, and then has to escape from them later on when they stop. And it is an interesting predicament, and surprisingly it does work. The things that it replaces, I was a bit upset with some of the things that it replaced. Like, for example, there's this brilliant scene in Shadow and Bone where Alina she's given a kefta for the first time, and the kefta are things that, like, garments that they're like big coat dress things that Grisha wear, and they all have their own colours. So corporalki are red, etherealki are blue, and then materialki are purple, and they're all sort of embroidered. I think it's just the cuffs that are embroidered in the books, but in the TV show, like, it's like the whole, like, sort of front part are embroidered with separate colours, which indicates what sort of rank they are. When Alina is sized for her kefta, the Darkling says make it black, and she turns around to him and says, no, I want it to be blue because I'm a summoner. And he's like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't stand apart from everyone else. And she's like, well, no, I haven't. You know, I haven't stood apart from everybody else. I've never fitted in with anybody, and now I want to fit in. That was one of the best scenes of the book for me, because that's her sort of Alina's whole thing is that she is merciful, and she is, you know, she doesn't want to hurt anybody. That's like her whole thing. There is a bit of that represented in the series, but because the series is focusing on so many characters, and obviously it's not first person, but because there are so many characters added in and playing like side by side, you don't really get to see a lot of those moments where Alina's like helping people. Kind of missed those. But yeah, I did like how it was done. I liked how the character interactions with, there weren't that many interactions between like the Crows and the sort of original characters from Shadow and Bone, but the ones that did occur did seem to be natural for the characters. You know, it wasn't like things were being forced. They were still like sticking to their characteristics, and I will hold my hands up and say that is the best cast that I think ever could have played it, because every single person looked exactly how I pictured them in my head. I don't know how they did it, but every single person, like every single cast member, looked perfect. It's brilliant. I can't say anything more than that. Freddie Carter, the perfect cast. Kit Young was born to play Jesper, and I will not have anyone else play Jesper ever. I don't care. Ben Barnes was the most brilliant villain I've ever seen. They were all just perfect. And they were just perfect. I can't say anything else. They were just perfect. Perfect. Best cast thing ever. Ben Barnes should be in everything. I'm done. They also aged the cast up significantly, which they aged the characters up significantly, which really worked. I don't think Ben Barnes ages, actually. Man is stuck at like 20 forever. Actually, he's not, but he is. He's looking good. I need to stop. Obviously, since this is a prequel to Six of Crows, not all of them are there, so my one gripe was that Wylan wasn't there. I love Wylan. Wylan and Jesper were my favourite pairing in Six of Crows, and I'm so sad that they never made it there. So really, you didn't even really get Melina. All you really got in the first series was Darklina. That was the only sort of ship that was there. So the other ones aren't really formed yet, but you can see like where they will be. You had this whole subplot of Nina and Matthias like meeting up and how they saved each other. So you have sort of them, like the beginning of them falling in love, and then you have Kaz and Inej, and the only time she doesn't kill, but the only time she ever kills is when Kaz is in danger, and or when someone's threatening him, and I love it. It was great. Except for the fact that Wylan wasn't there. My one gripe. Wylan was not there. I'm upset. Also, felt quite let down by the fact that they went on and on about, I saw some cast interviews and they were like, oh yeah, there's a scene in the war room between the Darkling and Alina, and it gets quite like heavy, and literally all they do is kiss, and I was like, come on, Netflix. There's loads of violence in this, Netflix, come on. All those comparisons to Game of Thrones were just nonsense. What I didn't like about the show, I didn't like the fact that so in the books and the show, to get her amplifier, Alina has this collar made of stag antlers. In the show, they in the book they're just sort of like clasped around. It's like a proper collar, but they're just sort of, you know, like placed on her collarbones and fastened like at the back, like with like an unbreakable sort of lock, or not a lock. They're kind of just fused together, so she can't get out of them ever. And in the show, they sank the antlers into Alina's collarbone, which A, looked really creepy, and B, they sank further in, and now they're gone. You know, you can't see them anymore, and I'm like, it could have been a cool effect. You know, she would have had to hide it, but at the same time, like, one of the whole things is that she is now marked, and she has to, you know, when she goes into hiding, she has to wear a scarf because she's marked by this collar and she can never escape it. It's like a constant reminder to everyone what she is. And the fact that they've like removed that sort of angle of it is a bit disappointing. Like, I was hoping for it. And also, in the books, the mere like sort of clasping of it around her neck gives the Darkling power, control of her power. And in the TV show, they made it so that he had a bit of antler like sunk into his hand at the same time, and that sort of connected them. So when Alina realised that she also had control over the amplifier because she had spared the stag's life, and therefore she also, like, I guess its life was also given for her. You know, in the book, when that happens, she's totally fine. You know, she does it by herself. You know, she has this sort of realization, and it was like a really like empowering moment where she's like, no, I am also in control here. And even after that, there is this connection between them. Like later on in the series, they both use it to visit the other one, and even later on, Alina uses this connection to use the Darkling's power against him. But in the show, Alina stabs it out of his hand. Like, she drives a knife into his hand and the antler like pops out, which is a bit gruesome. But this antler pops out, and that's their sort of connection severed, and you've now not got anything to like show. I don't know how they're gonna do, you know, the really telling bits later on where like he's you know in control of her, and he's, or not in control of her, but they're, you know, they're still like connected, they're still tied together. So I don't know how they're gonna do that. I felt like it was a really nice metaphor to have that collar around her neck the entire time. The other thing I didn't like was the characterization of David. David in the book is, you know, like, he's a shy nerd kind of guy, doesn't really make eye contact with anybody, doesn't like talking to anybody, would rather just like, you know, like talk, or not talk, just have, you know, time to himself and work on things. He's a jurist. And in the show, they made it so that he was quite, I don't know, came off a bit like cocky, I guess. Yeah, the other thing that I didn't like was how, so in the books, I don't think the Darkling is ever really referred to as General Kerrigan. It's always sort of the Darkling, or just General, or Sir, or whatever. And then in Ruin and Rising, he tells Alina his true name, his first name, which is Alexander. And in the show, he tells it to her like 3 or 4 episodes in. And that kind of cheapened it for me, because she just continues to like refer to him as that. And I get that they're trying to make it so that like when she talks to Mal and refers to the Darkling as Alexander, it comes across as a bit too familiar, and it builds that sort of conflict between them. But at the same time, you sort of miss out on this like beautiful reveal of him showing her a weakness and her finally finding the power to defeat him. So you kind of miss out on that further down the line. But I mean, they might come up with other things to solve these problems. One of the things that I really did like about this series was that you have a whole heap of LGBTQ representation. It was great. I loved it. Ivan and Fedior were, I don't know if I'm saying that right, were in a relationship. You have Jesper having a sex scene with some random stable boy, and I just thought it was great. Disappointed Wyland's not here though. What can I do about that? And I think it was just so much better and more well done than the books. I know that these were written a while ago and that things have moved on since then. And I think that putting those relationships in a show like that was really, it really made up for sort of what was missing out of the books. The characters were perfect, that's all I'm going to say. I also don't know how they're going to go forward from here, because if they're like merging the 2 series, are they going to do, so basically series 1 was all of Shadow and Bone, so is series 2 going to be all of Siege and Storm? What are they going to do with the Crow's characters in there? I have a feeling they're going to make it 5 series in total, and they're going to have season 1, or maybe they'll make it 3, they might make it 3. Season 1 will be Shadow and Bone, and, you know, the prequel to the 6 Crows, and then season 2 will be Siege and Storm and 6 Crows, like the actual plotline of 6 Crows. And then season 3 will be Ruin and Rising and Crooked Kingdom. They might split them in half. I'm hoping they split them in half because some of these like plot lines, especially, like look at the size of this. You can't fit that whole plot line in a series, especially if you're mixing it with something else. That's not going to work. I wonder how they'll do it, but I'm very keen to watch anything with Ben Barnes in it again. Actually, I'm very keen to watch season 2, and I think I might go and start season 1 again right now. Thank you very much for watching. Have you watched Shadow and Bone? Have you read this series? What did you like? What did you enjoy about it? What can I look forward to in King of Scars and Rule of Wolves? That is one thing I'm looking forward to, is who they're going to cast as Nikolai, because that is a very important role, I feel, especially Ruin and Rising. You've got to be able to pull off, you know, the monster look, so, you know, better make it someone good. You can follow all my book reviews on my blog, writingwerewolf.wordpress.com. And you can follow my Twitter and Instagram at writingwerewolf and at writingwerewolf.reads respectively. All these links will be down below in the description. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy this video, please leave me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I make content like this all the time. I have previously made, if you like young adult novels, you can check out my series Young Adult as an Adult, which somehow works. So far I've done Twilight and the Raven Boys, and there is a Vampire Academy video coming soon. I promise. I couldn't film it the first time around, so I read them all again. It is coming. I promise. It will be here soon, shortly, with us all. And we shall rejoice. Thank you very much for watching again. Enjoy. Bye.